Hey guys, this Nostalgia Post episode is about a show that I really loved growing up as a kid called Moesha. And this video is dedicated to the late Yvette Wilson, who passed away a little while ago, who played Andella on this show. I really loved her both on Moesha and the Parkers, so I'm very sad that she lost her battle with cancer, especially when she was so close to really getting the treatment that she needed. So rest in peace, Andella, and I thank you for all the laughs that you gave me while you were here. When I was a young girl, Moesha was to me what Full House was to a lot of other people, and when I looked at the character of Moesha and how she kind of interacted with her family, I could see myself a lot in her. Also, it was kind of sort of uplifting to see a fairly dark-skinned, natural-haired black teenager being the star of a show. And when I was away in England, I was kind of being a little nostalgic, and I started watching clips of the show on YouTube. And then I was surprised to find out that they actually had a season 1 DVD that was coming out of the show, because a lot of shows like this don't really get that kind of DVD release. Like, they only have one season of Living Single out, which is a fucking travesty. But so I wanted to buy the show and really saw how it held up today. For those of you who are unaware of the premise, Moesha is a story about 15-year-old Moesha Mitchell and her day-to-day life with her father, Frank, her younger brother Miles, and her new stepmother Dee, who was the principal at her high school. One of the things I liked about this show is that how it portrayed a blended family in a really genuine way. The older Moesha is reluctant to let Dee into her life and take care of her family, because for the past 3 years, you know, her mother had passed away 3 years ago, and so she had been taking care of the family. And Moesha was not looking for someone to replace her mother, and so there's always this tension between Moesha and Dee, because you can tell that Miles really cares about her. Frank obviously loves his new wife, but Moesha, she just isn't ready to have another woman in her life in that kind of way. And the episodes dealing with Moesha and Dee's relationship are some of the best episodes, and really at the heart of what I think made this first season really fun to watch for me. There's an episode, Mother's Day, was particularly good because it showed that while Moesha does like Dee and can allow her a place in the family, she's not her mother. She can never really be her mother in the way that she wants, because first of all, she's 15. She's old enough that she doesn't need that maternal character as much as she would have. Right now, her mother's memories are really what's the most important thing for her, and while she can use Dee as, you know, as a stepmother person, as someone to look to as another female role model, she's never going to really be her mother at this point in her life, especially if she had a good relationship with her mother. And so when Miles gives Dee a card that says Happy Mother's Day, Mom, you know, even though Brandy's acting was a little kind of shaky during this first season, you can really tell how this really frustrated her, because that's not their mom. This is someone else. This is a stranger pretty much for her. And they really dealt with that issue in a really real way that was both heartfelt and entertaining, because there were times where they would be fun together and they would have fun. There was an episode where they were like, where Dee taught them how to do the hustle, and it was, you know, that was fun and that was cute, but they also never made you forget, like, they still have their issues. The other supporting characters I liked were Hakeem, who passed away, Kim, who is more popular and known on the Parkers, Niecy, and Adele, who just passed away. They all have really good comedic timing and really add something fun to the show, and I think that Kim Parker, played by Countess Vaughn, is just, that girl is spot on. Like, she is just, like, she is that black chick that I know, and I've known my whole life, and she plays it perfectly. So I really loved her. Hakeem coming in and eating them at a house and home, and how he's plays off all the characters, that was really entertaining. Niecy doesn't really play a big role in this season, but she will later on, and so it was fun seeing her when we got to see her. And overall, I just think the supporting cast really works well together. I think they all really make the show fit together. And also, there are so many famous black celebrities in the show. Well, famous black celebrities that I noticed. Like, for example, Gabrielle Union was in this show, and I had never noticed that. And I just saw her, I was like, Gabrielle Union, you looked exactly the same. Black don't crack, because you looked like a teenager forever. Like, her and Bianca Lawson have been playing teenagers longer than I have been alive. And it's kind of like, how do you do this? It's insanity. You're fucking brilliant. But they just, she was in it. And then Bernie Mac, rest in peace, Bernie. he was also in the show because he played Moesha's uncle, and so he would come, and he was Uncle Bertie, of course. And it was just like seeing him and hearing his line delivery. I was kind of like, I kind of teared up the first time I saw him. It was kind of like, I miss him so much. It's just, that was another person taken too soon. So that was just really big for me. And we're talking about the quality of the show in terms of humor and everything. It's very dated. It's very 90s. I mean, just looking at like the hair and the fashion, like Moesha's braids, that was so 90s. Bitches would not be doing that now, especially with those little like bantu twist thing. All of that stuff. No, that's unacceptable now. But at the same time, it adds a little thing. It's like Boy Meets World. I laugh at their clothing style because it's just so, like the high-waisted jeans that come up to like your navel. Like, who did that? And then the worst thing is that those fashion styles are coming back. They're bringing back those pants and like the half-feet. Oh my god! I'm just like, please, why did you bring back the worst fashion? All the denim. It's horrible. But the humor in this show actually still made me laugh. I think it's because it's humor that I still relate to, even though because I watched this show when I was little, when I was a kid. Now as a teenager, the humor, well, I'm not a teenager anymore technically, but as an older person, the humor is more relevant to me now than it was then. And some of the like weaker jokes don't really work because it's not like hilarious, but for the most part, I still feel the energy and the spirit of the show. And while the show is a majority black cast, it's not a black show. I think you can be white or any kind of race and still watch the show and still enjoy it, because overall, it's a teen dramedy. It's the same thing that you saw on a whole bunch of other shows that had a white lead, and if you like those, this is really no different. I mean, sometimes they'll deal with black-ish issues, but it's not really focused on that. It's all very universal. It's all about personal problems that are in Moesha's life that are not solely African-American female problems. It's about growing up. It's about dealing with your parents. It's about dealing with loss. It's about dealing with your career and making the right decisions and learning from them. It's very traditional 90s television show in that sense, and I think that if it's something that I think anyone can enjoy. So final thoughts about it. So Moesha is dated in a lot of ways. The fashion, the music, the hair, oh my god, the bands. They bring up some stuff. I was just like, dude, you better let that go. There was this one funny joke though that it had me rolling in the deep, because it was basically like Moesha had just come back from a movie, and she said to her father, like, we went to go see this new Eddie Murphy movie. I don't know how your generation ever found him hilarious. And then the father said, that's what people are going to be saying about Martin Lawrence. And I just was like, oh god. I stopped watching it because I laughed so hard. That was like Negrodamus right there. That was some real true facts. But some of the jokes were even funnier to me now, looking back and realizing how times had changed and how stuff didn't really work out. So, however, I think it holds strong as the issues and the plot are relatable even now. I mean, you can relate to coming of age stories for the most part in any generation, because we're always coming of age. We're always learning more things about ourselves and who we are. And I enjoyed that even in just the first season, and which is only 14 episodes. Like, this is a 14 episode season, and I think, like, is it an hour long? I think it's 45 minutes for each episode. But either way, in that little amount of time, they dealt with, you know, heartbreak, your first heartbreak, sex, dead parents, interracial relationships, poverty. You know, they dealt with a lot of stuff in that little amount of time. They dealt with it in really fun ways and really creative ways, and it just made the show entertaining. And it was something that I think that's certainly worth checking out. Brandy's acting is kind of the biggest thing that kind of like about this movie, because she's not a horrible actress, but sometimes she just doesn't reach the emotional cues that she needs to reach. It's like a little flat sometimes, and while you can feel for her and you can feel for the character, and she can do the comedy stuff really well, but sometimes when she needs to go to beyond that kind of pinnacle, she doesn't always reach it. But I still feel like it hits the mark close enough that you can still feel something for it. So overall, I think I give this show a B+. I mean, it's not a bad show. I think, like, I can't even call it average, because I really feel like I would call something like, oh god, Family Matters average, because that show is just not funny. Like, that I I can do a nostalgia post about Family Matters because that show is just it's fucking horrible. But this show, I feel, for all its hang-ups about how the jokes have changed and the times have changed, I feel like overall the heart and soul of this show is still very strong because it didn't rely on slapstick or really cheap humor. It was really just about family, about growing up, and so it lived up to my nostalgia really well. And it wasn't a show that I think was so ingrained in my nostalgia it couldn't fuck up, because I've watched some other shows that like don't really, like the Parkers for me don't hold up as well as Moesha does, and the Parkers is probably more something I grew up with than Moesha, because Moesha I got into really late, but the Parkers would have been on later, so I got to watch out the entire series through. And I would say that between the two shows, I would rather watch Moesha than the Parkers. So I feel like this show lived up to my nostalgia. It wasn't as great as I remember it to be, but I never remember it being that great either. So that it was never really something I held to a high pinnacle of entertainment. So now rewatching it, I can honestly say that I think this show was really, really enjoyable and entertaining. And I definitely think that if you are a fan of that comedy, and if you've watched it in the past, definitely check it out. It definitely is fun.
Moesha.